as Sandra and I start our 26th year of ministry at Harvest International, I can't help but take a moment to reflect on some of the things that the Lord has done through Harvest. I remember starting out in 1989 with one missionary family in Haiti with 30 children that needed help. As the time went on, we had sent a variety of families to Haiti. We sent at one time a family with 13 children that went down to minister down there. As of the end of 2014, we have 2 families that live down there full time with works in 2 different parts of the country. We have 4 schools and orphanages that we support. And in 2014, we provided over 60,000 meals for those children. Our second missionaries came in the early part of the 90s. Dick and Barb Johnson had taken a trip to Uganda and came back all excited about what was going on there. Their hearts were broken at what they saw in Fort Portal, Uganda, and they wanted to be a part of starting a work in Fort Portal. They were our missionaries, our first missionaries to Africa in 1995, I believe. They are in the process now, after 20 years, of turning the work over as they complete their time as missionaries. All the children that they started with have graduated through high school and college. Shortly after that, we had an experience with a lady that came that had gone on the mission field to Odessa, Ukraine. Lila Steele, many of you will remember, came to me, didn't come to me, came for some help with some copies that she needed. And we got to talking and found out that she had a desire to go back to Odessa, Ukraine full time. As you can well imagine, not very many organizations were jumping at the chance of sending a 70-year-old back on the mission field. So Harvest International took her on, and Lila was able to live in Ukraine for 10 years and start a home in Ukraine for boys that needed a place to live after they get out of the orphanages. Shortly after that, we found some missionaries that needed help in India. I remember going to a missions conference, a medical conference, and running into a doctor friend of mine who had told me about what he was doing in India and needed some help with supporting the work in India. So Harvest took on missionaries in Bangalore, India, and they've been part of us since the late 90s, early 2000s. In 2000, a man called me on the phone and said that someone had given him my name, and he was interested in going on the mission field as well. And I had just finished reading the prayer of Jabez, and remember reading the part in the prayer of Jabez where Jabez asked the Lord to extend his territory. And just as I read that portion, I got this phone call. It was from Randy Bullock. I had to laugh because as soon as he told me what he wanted to do, I just thought, wow, God answered that prayer quickly. And Randy and Debbie Bullock and their family became our missionaries in Oradea, Romania. They're still part of Harvest International. Randy now is the Eastern European director, overseeing the work in Romania and Ukraine and in India. I remember getting an invitation to go to Cuba, and in the later part of the 90s I traveled to Cuba a couple of times, and I ran into and met a man who was running an organization called Echo Cuba. Teo Baboon was his name. We became very, very good friends. Teo was trying to help the church in Cuba. At that time, there was just a tremendous revival going on in Cuba. And Harvest came alongside and helped Teo with a variety of different projects that we did. We sent in medical supplies. At one time we did a project taking in powdered milk for children and elderly people. And since that time, Teo and I have been partners as we work to help with what's going on in Cuba. This last year, we partnered with them and sent over 1,800 New Testaments into Cuba. In 2005, I got a phone call again from someone who was looking to go on the mission field. And they were interested in going to Eldoret, Kenya. And their problem was, like many of the missionaries that we have helped, they didn't quite meet all the requirements. I mentioned earlier that we sent a family with 13 children. That's unheard of. You just don't send families with 13 children. Randy and Debbie Bullock had teenage daughters. That was another thing that a lot of organizations didn't do. And Pam and Alan were also in that situation where they didn't meet the requirements to go through their denominations. So we took them on, and Pam and Alan moved to Eldoret, Kenya, and started a home there called The Haven, and partnered with a pastor that lived in Eldoret who was trying to minister to some girls. And so the two of them got together, and between the two of them started what is now known as The Haven and Fresh Start in Eldoret, Kenya.
10 years ago this month, Alan and I moved to Eldoret, Kenya to establish the children's home, The Haven. The Haven now homes more than 90 children. They are totally dependent upon the Lord to feed, clothe, and educate them. The Lord uses faithful sponsors to meet these needs.
Pam and I sensed a call from God to serve Him in global missions. We applied to a couple of mission organizations, but we were rejected. So we were at a loss as to how to get on the field. A friend suggested that we contact Harvest International, and he assured me that Harvest would be a good fit for us. He sure was right. We have enjoyed incredible support and encouragement from the Harvest staff and board. We love and cherish the Harvest family. Won't you have a heart for Harvest and come alongside the Harvest International family as we minister to children in East Africa and around the world?
By now you can tell that a lot of the folks that call us are people that have a genuine call in their lives and are needing someone to help them get to the mission field. That was Dan and Dolly Lousy in 2007. Dan and Dolly had been working down in Grenada for many years and felt a call to go to Zimbabwe. The organization they were with were not very favorable in sending them there, and so they came to Harvest and asked if we would be a covering for them, and we said that we would. Dan and Dolly have been in Zimbabwe since 2007. Their goal is to train pastors and leaders of the church in Zimbabwe and helping them and encourage them to step out and to be missionaries to other parts of the world. In the latter parts of 2011, we had two families that came to us, Steve and Sherry Westbrook and their family were looking to go on the mission field and felt called to go to St. Croix. And so we were able to be a covering for them and sent them to St. Croix. That same year, Lloyd and Elaine Cook also needed some covering. They were recommended by Dan and Dolly Lousy to come to Harvest, and so they did, and we took them on as well. in 2014. 2013, we partnered with a gentleman by the name of Audley McLean, who has a vision for reaching South Africa through radio. Audley does a program called The Bible Speaks. It's broadcast here locally 7 days a week through our radio station in Ocala, and it reaches all of Central Florida and in the southeastern U.S. And in 2014, our last missionary was sent to India. Ray Nelson, in November, traveled to India to continue doing the work that he had started several years before. Harvest doesn't solicit any of our missionary supporters. We feel that that's their support base, and we encourage them to support the missionaries of their choice. But you know, the electric bill has got to be paid, the phone bill has to be paid, there's staff that needs to be paid. So the way that we do that is once a year we have a fundraiser, and we use this to raise funds to pay for the administrative expenses that we incur throughout the year. A couple of the other things that we do just to offset some of the expenses is we have a couple of yard sales a year at the office, and those are a lot of fun, or at least that's what the staff tells me. And we have lots of people that come to that, and they're just amazed at some of the items that we have, and that usually raises a couple of $1,000s for us. But the main fundraiser is the Have a Heart for Harvest fundraiser, which we do just once a year. There's a lot of things that have happened. One of the things that I know for sure is that God has used us to help people that aren't perfect to get to the mission field.